You are tuned to Community Radio Networks on this fourth day of April. It is a beautiful day out there, and we have all the information that you need to go take on the day right here on Community Radio Networks. We are going to start with the world news. This is Community Radio Networks, the world news read by Shabnam Madgil. A helicopter plucked 6 miners to safety from a Taiwan quarry this morning as rescuers worked to free scores of people trapped in highway tunnels after the island's biggest earthquake in a quarter of a century. 9 people killed and more than 1,000 injured in yesterday's magnitude 7.4 quake. But strict building regulations and widespread public disaster awareness appear to have staved off a major catastrophe on the island. Dozens of residents of the worst-hit city spent a night outdoors rather than in apartments, still being shaken by aftershocks and a massive engineering operation underway to fix damaged roads and prop up tilting buildings. Dramatic video released this morning by the island's Central Emergency Operations Center showed a helicopter flying 2 sorties to pluck these 6 miners trapped in a gypsum quarry in Hualien County near the epicenter of the quake. The island has been shaken by over 300 strong aftershocks since the first quake yesterday morning, and the government warned people to be wary of landslides or rockfalls if they venture to the countryside. And a 2-day public holiday has begun this morning. The latest figures from the National Disaster Agency said 9 people had been killed and 1,050 injured in the quake. Authorities were in contact with 101 people trapped in tunnels or cut-off areas but had lost touch with another 46, although they were believed to be safe. Taiwanese authorities have yet to estimate how much it will cost to recover from the damage caused by this massive deadly earthquake that struck the island yesterday, which collapsed buildings, felled water towers and caused landslides that damaged roads and other infrastructure. Repair costs for the last earthquake of such a scale reached near $10 billion. A quarter of a century ago, Taiwan rejected help from its estranged neighbor in China, and when an offer to help came from across the strait again this week, Taiwan speedily rebuffed it. President Biden's scheduled call with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu today will not simply test the leaders' increasingly sour relationship. It will also highlight a glaring contradiction in U.S. policy towards the war in Gaza, a conflict that potentially poses an existential threat to both of their political careers. While President Biden is expressing growing frustration about the Israeli leaders' conduct of the military onslaught and its impact on civilians, including the killing of the 7 aid workers in Gaza yesterday, the fundamentals of staunch U.S. support for Israel are not shifting. And at the same time, as the White House is demanding changes to Israeli procedures to shield civilians, warning a planned assault on Rafah could cause a humanitarian disaster. And the administration is moving towards approving a sale of F-15 warplanes to Israel worth $18 billion. President Biden and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu expected to speak by phone today, and this will be their first direct communication since the 7 aid workers have been killed by an Israeli strike in Gaza this week. 3 former Supreme Court judges have said the government is breaching international law by continuing to arm Israel. In a letter to the Prime Minister signed by more than 600 lawyers, academics and retired senior judges, including Baroness Brenda Hale, the former Supreme Court president calls the current situation in Gaza catastrophic. The U.S., Britain and France have opposed a Russian-drafted UN Security Council statement that would have condemned an attack on Iran's embassy compound in Syria, which Tehran has blamed on Washington's ally Israel. Meanwhile, Palestine officially revived their bid for a full member state in the UN, a process with an uncertain outcome, but one they say is necessary in the face of Israel's offensive in Gaza. The Palestinians, who have had observer status at the world body since 2012, have lobbied for years to gain full membership, which would amount to recognition of Palestinian statehood. The Palestinian delegation to the UN is pushing for this vote to be recognized as a full member state next month, a move opposed by the United States. The Palestinians want the Security Council to vote on their revived request for full membership in the UN, despite the U.S. reiterating yesterday that Israel and the Palestinians must first negotiate a peace agreement. And the bodies of 6 foreign aid workers killed in that Israeli strike were taken out of Gaza to Egypt for repatriation. The Israeli military killed 7 staff of the U.S.-based food charity The World Central Kitchen in an attack that UN Chief Antonio Guterres labeled unconscionable and an inevitable result of the way the war is being conducted. Celebrity chef Jose Andres has said that an Israeli attack that killed these 7 of his food aid workers in Gaza targeted them systematically, car by car. He was speaking in a video interview and said the World Central Kitchen charity group he founded had clear communication with the Israeli military, which he said knew his aid workers' movements. World Central Kitchen has released a statement calling for an independent third-party investigation into these attacks that killed 7 of his staff. Many Palestinians in the Gaza Strip will be wondering how they are going to feed their families after the World Central Kitchen paused its operations in response to the killing of 7 of its aid workers in that Israeli airstrike. And another U.S. charity it works with, ANERA, has also suspended work because of the escalating risks faced by local staff and their families. More than 33,000 Palestinians have been killed and 75,600 injured in Israeli military offensive on Gaza since the 7th of October. The UN Human Rights Council will consider tomorrow a draft resolution moved by Pakistan calling for an arms embargo on Israel, citing the plausible risk of genocide in Gaza. If the draft resolution is adopted, it would mark the first time that the UN's top rights body has taken a position on the war raging in Gaza. And the text is co-sponsored by Bolivia, Cuba, and the Palestinian Mission in Geneva. The 8-page draft demands Israel end its occupation of Palestinian territory and immediately lift its illegal blockade on the Gaza Strip. Last week, the UN Security Council in New York passed a resolution calling for a ceasefire, thanks to an abstention from Washington, Israel's closest ally. And just a day before the International Al-Quds Day, leaders of the Palestinian and Arab resistance reiterated their calls for the unity of the resistance against the Israeli occupation and its allies. Iran President Raisi, Hamas chief Ismail Haniyeh, Hezbollah's Hassan Nasrallah, and Yemeni rebel groups Abdul Malik al-Houthi appealed people to support Palestinian people before Al-Quds Day, which falls on the last Friday of the holy month of Ramadan, and that is tomorrow. Navigational signals were scrambled over the Tel Aviv metropolitan area this morning as Israel braced for a potential Iranian attack on the country's economic center. Traffic delayed, food delivery disrupted, and transportation applications showed Tel Aviv residents to be in Beirut, Lebanon, and the measures appeared to be taken by Israeli officials to disrupt GPS-navigated drones or missiles that Iran or its proxies might fire at the country. Iran has repatriated the bodies of 7 Revolutionary Guard Corps members killed in that strike on the country's consular annex in Damascus, which Tehran blamed on Israel. The calendar says it's spring, but winter storm warnings are in effect in the Midwest and the Northeast as snowstorms slam both regions. In the Northeast, heavy snow will blanket the mountains and ski resorts of upstate New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, and Maine. Some of the higher elevations in New England could see more than 2 feet of snow. And some of the U.S. cities with the cleanest air include Anchorage in Alaska, Santa Fe in New Mexico, and Hilo in Hawaii. That's according to the annual World Air Quality Report. The recipient of the world's first pig kidney transplant is heading home from Massachusetts General Hospital 2 weeks after the surgery. The hospital said that the 62-year-old will continue his recovery at home. And in one of the largest cash heists in Los Angeles history, thieves made off with as much as $30 million in an Easter Sunday burglary at a San Fernando Valley money storage facility. It occurred at an unnamed facility where cash from businesses across the region is handled and stored. And there was dramatic testimony in the IV bag tampering trial of former Richardson doctor Ronaldo Ortiz. The jury heard from the husband of a woman who died after using the tainted IV bag. At a Grand Rapids, Michigan campaign event, former President Trump told his supporters he had spoken to the family of Ruby Garcia, a 25-year-old woman who was allegedly murdered by an undocumented immigrant. But Garcia's sister said Trump didn't speak with anyone from the family, and she criticized him for politicizing her sister's death. In newly filed documents, Michigan prosecutors are asking a judge to sentence the parents of school shooter Ethan Crumbley to at least 10 years in prison, alleging shooting, they have both showed a chilling lack of remorse after they were convicted for involuntary manslaughter. In two separate sentencing memorandums dated yesterday, Oakland County prosecutors asked the judge to sentence each parent to 10 to 15 years in state prison. And a 12-year-old suspected of shooting dead another boy of the same age at his school said he had been motivated by bullying. This according to the Finnish police. Two girls wounded in that morning shooting at the Vietola school in the city of Vantaa, which is located immediately north of the capital of Helsinki. Flags flew at half-mast across the country yesterday. And the International Boxing Association said it is analyzing a decision by Global Sports Top Court to dismiss its appeal against a withdrawal of its Olympic recognition, and it may take the case to the Swiss Federal Tribunal. Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova accused the International Olympic Committee President Thomas Bach of discrediting international sport and contradicting the principles of the Olympic movement. At her weekly briefing, she also repeated her call for an inquiry into Bach's actions. And Botswana's president, Masisi, has threatened to send 20,000 elephants to Germany amid a dispute over the import of hunting trophies. 20,000 elephants for Germany. This is not a joke. The African leader criticized the German government, particularly the Environment Ministry, for seeking to ban the import of trophies despite Botswana's overpopulation of elephants. And more than a third of the great ape population in Africa is endangered by mining. The threat to these 180,000 chimpanzees, bonobos, and gorillas has so far been underestimated. Uganda's constitutional court has refused to annul or suspend an anti-LGBTQ law that includes the death penalty for certain same-sex acts, but avoided some provisions that it said were inconsistent with certain fundamental human rights. The legislation is among the world's harshest anti-gay laws and has drawn condemnation from rights campaigners and sanctions from Western nations. In this news out of Kampala. Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to the World News on Community Radio Networks. Russia considers South Korea's decision to impose sanctions against Russian individuals and entities as an unfriendly move and will respond in due course. South Korea has imposed sanctions against two Russian vessels, which it says were carrying military cargo to North Korea. Seoul said it had sanctioned two Russian organizations also and two Russian citizens linked to Pyongyang's nuclear and missile programs. Indonesian President-elect Prabowo Subianto held talks this morning with Malaysia's leader on bolstering bilateral ties as part of a regional visit that has also taken him to China and Japan. Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim said he and Subianto discussed next steps to strengthen bilateral ties and also exchange views on their political experiences. He then flew to Japan, where he held talks with Prime Minister Fumio Kishida yesterday and pledged to strengthen ties, including defense cooperation. The UN's leading human rights body has agreed this morning to measures aimed at putting pressure on Myanmar and Iran, whose governments have been accused of using violence against their own people. The Human Rights Council, made up of 47 member countries, backed by consensus a measure that calls on governments to avoid exporting or selling jet fuel to Myanmar if they believe its ruling military junta might use the fuel to violate human rights in the war-racked Southeast Asian country, and urged a halt to the illegal transfer of weapons, munitions, and other military equipment to Myanmar. Panicked passengers jumped into the sea to escape a raging ferry fire in the Gulf of Thailand early this morning, and all 108 people on board were saved. The overnight ferry from Surat Thani province was about to arrive at Koh Tao, a popular tourist destination off the Thai coast, when one of the passengers suddenly heard a crackling sound and smelled smoke. Over 1,000 people participated in a silent protest in Auckland, New Zealand, calling for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza. They waved empty plates to symbolize the hunger of millions of Gazans as Israel has blocked many vital aid passages. And for the first time since the pandemic, China is allowing foreign climbers to access Mount Everest via Tibet. Everyone in Japan could one day have the same surname unless its restrictive marriage laws change. But the country's dwindling marriage rate could buck that trend, and a rapidly declining population might render it moot entirely. Unlike most of the world's major economies that have done away with the tradition, Japan still legally requires married couples to share the same last name. Normally, wives take their husband's name, and same-sex marriages still aren't legal in Japan. A movement to change the rules around these last names has been brewing, led by women's rights advocates and those trying to preserve the diversity of the Japanese last names in a nation where a handful of names are becoming increasingly common. A company that tracks them has said Seto is currently the most common, followed by Suzuki. Takahashi comes third, and about 1.8 million people out of Japan's 125 million population have the last name Seto, by Yuji Urai reporting this. And we do also have Japan officially rolling out its e-visa program through Japan Visa Application Centers managed by VFS Global for several countries, including India. And this single-entry visa allows a stay of up to 90 days in Japan, tailored for air travelers with ordinary passports. And this starts on the 1st of April. Eligible countries and regions for the e-visa include Australia, Brazil, Cambodia, Canada, Saudi Arabia, Singapore, South Africa, Taiwan, United Arab Emirates, United Kingdom, and the USA. The Indian Navy has said it has handed over to the Mumbai police 9 pirates who were apprehended in an operation in east of Somalia last week. Indian warships INS Trishul and INS Sumedha carried out a major operation in the high seas that resulted in successful rescue of fishing vessel Al Kambar and its crew of 23 people, and that happened in Somalia. An Indian Air Force Apache helicopter executed a precautionary landing this morning during an operational training sortie in the Ladakh area of responsibility, and the aircraft sustained damage during this landing process, attributed to the undulating terrain and the high altitude prevalent in the region. India has successfully tested the new generation nuclear-capable Agni prime ballistic missile, which has a strike range from 1,000 to 2,000 kilometers from the Abdul Kalam Island off the coast of Odisha last night. Delhi Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal's wife Sunita Kejriwal read out a message from her husband purportedly written from jail, asking Aam Aadmi Party legislators to visit their constituencies every day and take care of the problems faced by the people. What made this briefing noteworthy was the backdrop, along with photographs of Bhagat Singh and Baba Sahib Ambedkar. The picture of Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal showing him in jail also adorned the wall behind where she delivered this video message. Prime Minister Modi this morning kicked off his Bihar electoral campaign, and he addressed a public rally in the presence of Chief Minister Nitish Kumar. Congress leader and spokesperson Gaurav Vallabh tendered his resignation from the Grand Old Party today, and West Bengal's Cooch Behar constituency is preparing for a dynamic Lok Sabha campaign with rallies by Prime Minister Modi and Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee. The 2024 Lok Sabha elections will feature the second longest voting period in history, spanning 44 days in 7 phases from the 19th of April to the 1st of June, as per the Election Commission of India, and the election results are scheduled to be announced on the 4th of June. Prime Minister Modi today accused Congress and RJD of tarnishing India's name in the world during their tenure at the centre. And Bengal Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee today launched a scathing attack on the BJP while addressing a public rally in Cooch Behar ahead of the Lok Sabha elections. Former Congress President Sonia Gandhi and Railway Minister Ashwini Vaishnav took oath as Rajya Sabha members today, with 12 others from different states like Bihar, Odisha, Rajasthan, Andhra Pradesh and Telangana. The IPL has once again captured the attention of millions of viewers with its latest edition, setting new records in TV viewership. The IPL garnered an impressive TV viewership of 35 crores during its first 10 matches, and the figure has surpassed the viewership of any previous edition of the tournament, including those held during the COVID-19 pandemic. Kolkata Knight Riders soared to the top of the IPL points table after demolishing a lackluster Delhi Capitals by 106 runs in a stunning display of power hitting, followed by a clinical bowling effort yesterday. Bruised by Mayank Yadav's scorching pace, Punjab Kings batters facing an altogether different challenge when the Gujarat Titans bowling unit tries to take the pace off deliveries on a slightly tricky Motera track in their IPL match today. At least 5 Iranian security personnel have been killed in 2 attacks claimed by a militant group in the Sistan Balochistan province. It is the Foreign Office in Pakistan releasing a statement unequivocally condemning this heinous and dastardly terrorist attack in Iran. A day after a senior Afghan Taliban leader urged the banned Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan and Islamabad to sit together and negotiate for peace, the Foreign Office ruled out talks with the militant group. But this marks the first time a senior Afghan Taliban figure has chosen to publicly speak on this subject. In a meeting with Palestinian Ambassador Ahmed Javad, Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif assured him that Pakistan will continue to raise its voice at every international forum for the Palestinian people. Welcoming the adoption of the UN Security Council resolution on Gaza, the Premier expressed disappointment that Israel has chosen to ignore the resolution and continue to brazenly violate it. And Michael Bracewell will be the captain of New Zealand for the first time on their 2020 tour of Pakistan this month, with a host of top names missing because they are playing in the IPL. Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif said that the government would launch a probe into letters laced with the suspicious powder received by the judges of the Supreme Court and the High Courts in Islamabad and Lahore, and the letters were issued with the incomplete address of the sender. The government this morning announced a 3-day and 4-day holiday for Eid for offices observing 5 and 6 working days a week. As per a notification released by the Cabinet Division, the holidays have been scheduled from next Wednesday, the 10th of April, to Friday, the 12th of April, for offices observing a 5-day work week. Meanwhile, for offices observing 6 working days a week, the holidays have been set from Wednesday, the 10th of April, to Saturday, the 13th of April. Ladies and gentlemen, that's all I have in the world news for you, but I do have your financial news coming up for you in a separate segment. Just give me a minute on that, and we will get it to you. Let's get you the financial news for today. And today is Thursday, the 4th of April. And we'll start with the foreign currency exchange rates for today. We have the Indian rupee at 83.39, Pakistani rupee 277.83, Bangladeshi taka at 109.79, Sri Lankan rupee 299.42, Nepalese rupee 133.49. The British pound is at 0.79, the euro is at 0.92, the Canadian dollar 1.35, the Australian dollar 1.51, Mexican peso 16.53, Chinese yuan 7.23, Japanese yen 151.54. Japanese authorities will likely intervene in the currency market if the yen breaks out of this range it had been in for years and falls well below 152 per dollar, according to their currency diplomat. Once the dollar climbs above 152 yen, the pair's rise could accelerate and offer an opportunity for authorities to intervene. Russian ruble at 91.68, the Thai baht at 36.69, and the Turkish lira at 31.89. U.S. Stock futures have climbed this morning, setting the Dow up for a rebound as investors hunting for interest rate clues shifted focus to the coming U.S. jobs report. Dow Jones Industrial Average futures have risen roughly 0.3%, coming off 3 losing days in a row for the blue chip index. S&P 500 futures put on 0.3%, while contracts on the tech-heavy Nasdaq 100 popped about 0.4%, with both gauges building on slight closing gains. Federal Reserve Chair Jay Powell doubled down yesterday on his belief that inflation was on a bumpy path down to 2% and that central bank officials expect to lower rates at some point this year. He has warned the Federal Reserve risks being forced to delay its first cut to interest rates because of stubborn inflation and strong economic growth, in a blow to mortgage borrowers around the world. U.S. layoff announcements rose 7% last month to the highest since January of last year, led by technology and government sector job eliminations. However, cuts announced year-to-date are down 5% from a year ago amid a still strong job market. The Biden administration is expanding its crackdown on junk fees, and this time setting its sights on the mortgage industry. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau cites particular concern about the rising costs of home purchase loans, which surged nearly 22% from 21 to 22. In other words, closing costs rose nearly $1,000 to an average $5,954, the largest annual increase dating back to 2018. The tech industry has a wild first quarter, from Nvidia's stock price continuing to rocket higher and higher to Google's botched launch of its Gemini image generator and Apple's antitrust battle. The first 3 months of the year were full of highs, lows, and, well, even lower lows. The quarter was full of surprises. Meta announced its first dividend payment and a larger stock buyback program, and Apple decided to kill its long gestating car program, putting an end to an effort that would have catapulted the company into the automotive industry. Amazon confirmed it was laying off hundreds of employees from its cloud computing division, and the layoffs impacting sales and marketing roles as well as employees focused on technology at its physical stores come amid a broader company pivot on grocery store strategy. After a record haul of $32 billion in free cash flow last year, Amazon is projected to nearly double that this year. Dan Arians laid off workers, cut shifts and halted nearly all hiring last summer after sales slumped at his company. Best known for making bright orange snow blowers and lawn mowers sold around the world, headcount fell 20% to 1,600 people, and he doesn't see business improving until next year. The experience of the Arians Company, a fourth-generation family-owned firm in Brillion, Wisconsin, shows the stark contrast between U.S. factory employment essentially flatlining for more than a year and the 4-year boom in the wider job market. The U.S. Postal Service's decision this week not to renew a contract with FedEx worth more than $1.5 billion per year for domestic air transport and awarded to UPS after more than 2 decades actually benefits all 3 parties. Private equity firm Silver Lake has announced that it's acquiring entertainment company Endeavor Group Holdings for $27.50 a share. Endeavor's stock rose more than 2% this week after a brief halt ahead of the announcement, and it was trading just under $26 per share earlier. Autism Impact Fund, a venture capital group focused on autism and other neurodevelopmental disorders, has closed its debut fund with $60 million. 1 in 36 kids in the U.S. has autism, up from the prior rate of 1 in 44. But treatments lag far behind the rampancy. More than 200 artists, including Billie Eilish, Nicki Minaj, and Jonas Brothers, are calling for tech companies, artificial intelligence developers, and digital music services to cease the use of AI over concerns of its impact on artists and songwriters. The Artists' Rights Alliance issuing this open letter condemning the use of artificial intelligence to infringe upon and devalue the rights of artists. Dev Patel's directorial debut, Monkey Man, is set for theatrical release this week, and the film is expected to take a flying start at the box office, which many in the trade believe would be on par with Keanu Reeves' John Wick. The film, which is clashing with The First Omen, is expected to take a start of anywhere between $15 and $20 million in this first weekend that is coming up. The film was earlier headed for a direct-to-digital release on Netflix, but producers saw the film at the screening and felt it is meant for the big screen and decided to buy it from the streaming platform. The film had its premiere at South by Southwest Film Festival, where it received a long-standing ovation from the audience. The film is Dev Patel's homage to Bollywood and Korean cinema and will be releasing in 27 markets across the globe, and that'll be happening tomorrow. We do have the Tropicana that has closed its doors, marking an end to the third oldest hotel casino in Las Vegas with ties to the mafia and celebrities. It opened in 1957. The Tropicana was operated by an associate of mob boss Frank Costello. He was further tied to the resort when he was shot in New York carrying a paper with the resort's earnings. In the 1970s, the Tropicana was one of the several hotels named in a mob plot to skim collectively $2 million in gambling revenue from casinos. It also known as the Tiffany of the Strip and cost $15 million to build. The most expensive Las Vegas resort at that time was frequented by celebrities including Elizabeth Taylor and Frank Sinatra, and parts of The Godfather as well as the James Bond franchise were filmed at this resort. The Tropicana's closure paves the way for the construction of a $1.5 billion Major League Baseball stadium that will house the Oakland Athletics. If you've ever brought the stresses from your job home with you, don't feel alone, as a new poll has found that work stress plays a major role in breakups and divorce. According to the 6th Annual Workplace Mental Health Trends Report, 47% of employees surveyed felt that the majority of the stress they experience comes from work and not their personal lives. For CEOs, that number jumped to 66%. And even more concerning, the survey has found that 71% of the respondents reported work stress playing a major role or causing a personal relationship to end through breakup or divorce. After yesterday's drawing came up empty once again, the Powerball jackpot has continued to grow north of $1 billion and now sitting at an estimated $1.23 billion for Saturday's drawing. And in a significant breakthrough, scientists from NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory have revealed how the El Niño phenomenon influences the saltiness or salinity of coastal waters around the globe. The total solar eclipse passing over parts of the United States next week is set to bring an influx of tourists, and with it, nearly $1.5 billion. The Federal Aviation Administration estimating that the days leading up to the eclipse will be some of the busiest travel days of the season, with nearly 50,000 flights today and tomorrow. And more businesses are taking advantage of the total solar eclipse set to dim the skies across North America this coming Monday. In the snacks department alone, Krispy Kreme is teaming up with Oreo to sell a limited donut cookie creation. Sonic Drive-In is selling a blackout slush float, and Frito-Lay's Sun Chips have unveiled a new flavor that will only be available during the Celestial event's nearly 4.5 minutes of totality. Moon Pie also kicked off a Sun vs. Moon Smackdown theme campaign as the chocolate snack maker promotes its Eclipse survival kit made up of 4 mini moon pies and 2 pairs of Eclipse glasses. Meanwhile, airlines like Southwest and Delta have advertised Eclipse viewing flight paths, and beyond promotions from big name brands, small businesses along the 115-kilometer wide Prime Path are leading the charge to meet the incoming tourist demand. Over the weekend, as many as 1 million people descending on the Lone Star State ahead of Monday's total solar eclipse in cities along the path of totality, which runs from Eagle Pass and Del Rio through the Hill Country and into the Dallas-Fort Worth area, are planning festivals and events in an effort to capitalize. And of course, music is a big part of eclipse festivals this weekend. We do have the airports in Dallas getting ready for Monday's eclipse with the expectation of a significant increase in travelers. Plane passengers and roadway traffic could go up 30% from this Sunday through Tuesday from this influx of visitors. And airport officials at DFW Airport, as well as the Dallas Love Field, planning high-volume traffic procedures like those they use for major holidays and significant events like this one. And this will include having additional staff at the airport, enhancing the monitoring of facilities, parking and roadway traffic, and increasing security patrols. And if you are flying out of Love Field, you're encouraged to get there at least 90 minutes early. Yesterday, the James Beard Foundation dropped its full list of the James Beard Awards finalists, including the nominees for Outstanding Restaurateur, Best New Restaurant, and the Regional Best Chef Awards. And the list was whittled down from a long list of semifinalists that was released in January. And the nominees in the finals of these awards, these are the Oscars of the restaurant world. Texas has 11 finalists overall. Gemma in Dallas is a finalist for Outstanding Hospitality. David Uger is up for Outstanding Chef. He works at the Lucia in Dallas. And Convenience West in Marfa and Mixtele in San Antonio are finalists for Outstanding Restaurant. Barb's Barbecue in Lockhart is a finalist for Outstanding New Restaurant. And Christopher Cullum from Cullum's Attaboy in San Antonio, Misty Norris from Petra and The Beast in Dallas, Tracy Ezekiel from Birdies in Austin, and Anna Liz Pulido from Anna Liz Taqueria in Mission are up for Best Chef Texas. Nearly 2 million chickens were slaughtered earlier this week after a number of the animals tested positive for bird flu at a Texas egg production plant. The culling is the latest effort by agricultural companies to ward off the spread of the virus, which has affected more than 82 million birds across the U.S. since 2022. Classified as H5N1, the virus is a variant of influenza A. A fundraiser aiming to make a huge difference in the lives of single parents across North Texas is rapidly approaching. The 2024 Life Changer Celebrity Golf Classic is being held at the clubs of Prestonwood Hills Championship Golf Course in Plano, and that is happening this coming Tuesday. Around the country and around North Texas, students and their parents are sweating out yet another blunder involving their financial aid for this fall. This ongoing fiasco could affect at least 1 million students and their parents and involves the Department of Education's FAFSA, or Free Application for Federal Student Aid. The problem involves tax data transferred from the IRS and affects as many as 1 million FAFSA forms that were already submitted by the families of college-bound high school seniors. The U.S. Global Leadership Coalition met in Las Colinas yesterday to talk about Texas's role in the global economy. And the coalition includes business leaders, former cabinet secretaries from both parties, and retired leadership. The group said foreign trade supports 3.6 million jobs in Texas and 20.1% of all jobs here. They said Texas exported $375.3 billion in goods to other countries in 2021, and the state's biggest trading partners are Mexico, Canada, China, South Korea, and Brazil. A Houston appeals court has ruled negligence lawsuits can move forward against Oncor and other power companies sued over their involvement in the deadly power blackouts during the 21 winter storm, as Texas faced record low temperatures in February of 2021 and snow and ice made roads impassable. The state's electric grid operator lost control of the power. More than 200 people died during the blackouts, which resulted in millions being without power or water for days. And the victims lived in 77 counties and ranged in age from an infant to 102 years old. More than half of the people who died suffered from hypothermia, which is caused by prolonged exposure to the cold. And this ruling at the Houston Appeals Court involves more than 1,000 Texans and means gross negligence and international misconduct claims against power providers can go to trial. And during the storm, ERCOT ordered power to be cut off in some locations to help maintain the grid, and power companies decided where to make the cuts. Anyone tired of answering emails and calls from their boss after work may soon be protected by law in California. A bill has been introduced in the California legislature that would give employees the right to disconnect from their jobs during non-working hours. The U.S. SEC is asking publicly traded tech companies about their relationship with distributors and other business partners outside the U.S. in a push to root out possible corruption. Former President Trump's social media company may have gone public last week, but a new report indicates it might have been possible thanks to a Russian-American businessman under scrutiny in a federal insider trading investigation. Emergency loans provided in part by Anton Postolnikov helped keep Trump media afloat in 2022 after the SEC opened an investigation into the company's planned merger with Digital World Acquisition Corporation. And Canada's BlackBerry reported a surprise profit for the fourth quarter, helped by higher demand for its cybersecurity services amid growing online crimes and high-profile hacks. U.S.-listed shares of the company rose around 6% yesterday. And the severe drought, which has forced the Panama Canal, one of the world's busiest trade passages, to limit daily crossings, could impact global supply chains during a period of high demand. Javier Milei finds himself up against the clock just 4 months into his term as Argentina's president. He has cut federal aid for local governments, devalued the peso, announced plans to terminate 70,000 state jobs, and done away with price controls. But for all the economic pain that his shock therapy has unleashed on Argentines, annual inflation has soared to 276%. Voter support is little change from when he ascended office. One of the two executives from Binance, the world's largest cryptocurrency exchange, detained in Nigeria, appeared in an Abuja court this morning to face tax evasion and money laundering charges. Binance and two of its executives, Tigran Gambarian, a U.S. citizen, and Binance's head of financial crime compliance, and Nadeem Anjarwala, a British Kenyan who is a regional manager for Africa, have been charged with 4 counts of tax evasion and with laundering over $35 million. One of the earliest books in existence is expected to fetch upwards of $2.6 million when it goes up for auction later this year. The Crosby Scoian Codex, which was written in Coptic on papyrus in Egypt, is the earliest Christian liturgical book, according to the international auction house Christie's, which will be holding this sale in London on the 11th of June. A single scribe is said to have written the codex, which is made up of 52 leaves or 104 pages over a period of 40 years at a monastery in Upper Egypt. And carbon dating suggests the book dates back to sometime between the middle of the 3rd and 4th centuries, and one of the earliest witnesses to the spread of Christianity. The Codex features the first epistle of Peter and the book of Jonah. And it's this year has been great for the planet's billionaires, whose fortunes continue to swell as global stock markets shrug off war, political unrest, and lingering inflation. There are now more billionaires than ever. 2,781 in all, 141 more than last year, and 26 more than the record set in 2021. They are richer than ever, worth $14.2 trillion in aggregate, up by $2 trillion from last year, and 1.1 trillion above the previous record, also set in 2021. Now, 2/3 of the list's members are worth more than a year ago. Only 1/4 are poorer, and much of the gains come from the top 20, who added a combined $700 billion in wealth since last year. And from the U.S., which now boasts a record 813 billionaires worth a combined $5.7 trillion. China remains second with 473, including Hong Kong, worth $1.7 trillion. And despite the weak consumer spending and a real estate bust that helped wipe out some $300 billion in wealth. India, which has 200 billionaires, which is also a record, ranks 3rd. To calculate net worths, the stock prices and exchange rates were used from last month. Bridgewater Associates founder Ray Dalio has defended his decades-long investment in China and pledged he won't abandon the world's second-largest economy, even with all of the problems there that he's identified and the risks of a war with his own country. I have a wonderful 40-year relationship with the Chinese people and the Chinese culture, and that has led me to love them, he said. China pips India in buying Russian oil. India is no longer the top buyer of seaborne Russian oil. The country has been forced to reject some cargoes of seaborne Russian oil because of sanctions, and China is now lapping oil from Russia at deeply discounted rates. Tesla will send a team from the U.S. to India by the end of this month to study sites for a proposed $2 billion to $3 billion electric car plant. The company's reported push into India comes at a time when EV demand is slowing in its main markets of the US and China, and the EV maker will focus on Indian states that have automotive hubs such as Maharashtra, Gujarat, and Tamil Nadu. We do have, after its listing on the New York Stock Exchange, that GE Aerospace announced an investment of over $30 million to expand and upgrade its manufacturing facility in Pune. Gold prices reached a new all-time high today, influenced by global commodity prices. According to that, it reached in India 69,918 rupees per 10 grams at the opening. Services PMI grows and employment increases at the fastest rate in 7 months as India's service industry showed faster growth last month, driven by strong demand as per a private survey. And Tata Consultancy Services as well as Infosys, two of India's top software exporters, will begin the fourth quarter earnings season this month, expected to be a modest quarter for IT firms. And Baiju Ravindran, the founder of Byju's, a leading edtech company in India, has faced a significant setback as his net worth has dropped to zero. This according to the latest Forbes Billionaire Index 2024. Ace investor Ashish Kacholia has acquired a 17.2% stake in homegrown burger chain Jumbo King, making him the second largest shareholder. And as April and May approach, Agoda highlights popular Asian destinations with great value deals. Bengaluru has emerged as India's most affordable tourist spot, replacing Puri from last year's top spot. And of course, the list includes Udon Thani in Thailand, Surabaya in Indonesia, and some in Vietnam, Malaysia, as well as the Philippines, Narita in Japan also, and Kaohsiung in Taiwan. But Bengaluru in India leading that. India's Silicon Valley seamlessly blends tradition with innovation, and visitors can explore landmarks like the Bangalore Palace and indulge in South Indian cuisine. As part of reforms urged by the International Monetary Fund, the Privatization Commission has said that it was putting on the block a stake ranging from 51% to 100% of Pakistan International Airlines. The World Bank has painted a grim economic picture of Pakistan in its biannual report, cautioning that over 10 million more people are at risk of descending into poverty in the cash-strapped country. Despite massive repetitive price shocks to consumers and countrywide drive against theft and billing defaults, the World Bank has found power and gas circular debts increasing. Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif stressed the need for working together to enhance cooperation between Pakistan and France in areas of trade and investment, and invited French companies to invest in Pakistan, and made these remarks during a meeting with the ambassador of France in Islamabad. Local investors have stepped back from their plans to acquire a stake in Shell Pakistan Limited following an announcement of a finalized deal between the company's parent entity and a Saudi Arabian group. Pakistan's trade deficit with the Middle East has narrowed in the first 8 months of the current fiscal year. And Kaspersky Digital Footprint Intelligence has claimed that nearly 10 million devices fell victim to data stealing worldwide last year. 443,000 websites worldwide have experienced compromised credentials in the past 5 years. The compromised accounts of Pakistan domain in Pakistan reached 2.4 million. Huge wheat imports by the private sector have continued to bring down the prices of various flour varieties, but many retailers are not passing on the relief to consumers. Bulls continued their stampede today at the Pakistan Stock Exchange as shares gained 660 points to close at another record high. And singer Sahir Ali Bagga has alleged that Rahat Fateh Ali Khan did not credit him as a creator for for Zaruri Tha, a song that was released in 2014, and that he had pieces of evidence that he failed to give him credit on other instances. He maintained that he was the best talent of Pakistan and that he himself always attempted to help Pakistani talent be recognized, but claimed that he created Zaruri Tha not knowing that it would become a historic song of the Pakistan music industry. Ladies and gentlemen, that's all I have in the financial news for you today. And today is Thursday, the 4th of April. I do have your final segment of the program coming up. Stay with us right here on Community Radio Networks. Let's get you the final segment of our program today. It is a warming trend that is on the way. We have scattered the strong storms late Saturday and a decent Sunday coming up, but increasing clouds for the eclipse on Monday as I look at it right now, and increasing rain chances late Monday through early Thursday. But that's all happening next week. A dewy morning today where the temperatures fell into the 40s, and then the sky is clear and the wind virtually calm. It'll be sunny and beautiful today with highs ranging from 75 to 82, and the coolest weather will be east of the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Clear and not as cool tonight, with morning lows tomorrow in the low 50s, and a south wind returns tomorrow with highs back in the low to mid 80s. That's the weather for today. And of course, as we are nearing the end of the week, I do want to thank all our supporters of Community Radio Networks. I have huge thanks going out to Discount Power, and you can check out details at discountpowertx.com. Also to Houston EB5, and Mr. Pradeep Kumar can help you out there. You can check out more details at Houston eb5.com. Big thanks going out to attorney Pallavi Ahluwalia with the Ahluwalia Law Offices for her support of community radio networks. And you can check out more details at ahluwalialaw.com. The Wyndham Hotel in Irving that has the most beautiful banquet halls for your next event. Digital X-Force in South Lake that is headed by Lalit Ahluwalia. And also big thanks going out to KinzaLaw.com. Attorney Kimberly Kinza helping you with your immigration needs. My Kolachi restaurant in Plano, as well as their Ruchi Palace by My Kolachi in Carrollton. Also Shri Vimal in Irving and their Vimal's venue, along with Eggholic on MacArthur Boulevard in Irving. Also, thank you to Mystic Mandala and Flashbrush Productions for their support of community radio networks. After the successful siege of Boston, General George Washington began marching his unpaid soldiers from their headquarters in Cambridge, Massachusetts, towards New York in anticipation of a British invasion. Ladies and gentlemen, this happened on today's date, the 4th of April in 1776, and in a letter to the President of Congress, he wrote of his intentions in marching to New York and expressed frustration with Congress for failing to send adequate funds to allow him to pay his troops. He wrote, "I heartily wish the money had arrived sooner than that the militia might have been paid as soon as their time of service expired." General George Washington began that march to New York on today's date in the year 1776. And it was President William Henry Harrison who died after serving only 32 days in office on today's date in the year 1841. He holds the unfortunate presidential record of the shortest term in office. Ironically, the man with the shortest White House tenure delivered the longest inaugural address in history, which may have been his undoing. This first presidential speech, delivered on a bitterly cold March morning, clocked in at 1 hour and 45 minutes. He went to bed at the end of the inauguration day with a bad cold that soon developed into a fatal case of pneumonia. And some historians have claimed that a case of hepatitis may also have contributed to his demise on today's date, the 4th of April, in 1841. Isoroku Yamamoto, perhaps Japan's greatest strategist and the officer who would contrive the surprise air attack on U.S. naval forces at the Pearl Harbor, is born on today's date in 1884. Meticulously planned and carried out the Japanese airstrike on the U.S. naval base at Pearl Harbor on Oahu Island in Hawaii on the 7th of December in 1941. Waves of dive bombers, torpedo planes, and fighters descended on U.S. battleships, capsizing, destroying, or immobilizing several U.S. battleships within the first 30 minutes of the raid. And the attack was a decided success, especially in catching the U.S. off guard, and resulted in the destruction of 180 U.S. aircrafts and more than 3,400 American casualties. He is portrayed by Toshiro Mifune and Akira Kurosawa regular in 3 films: I Bombed Pearl Harbor, Admiral Yamamoto, and Midway. Born, Japan's mastermind of the Pearl Harbor attack, born on today's date in the year 1884. Poet and novelist Maya Angelou, born Marguerite Johnson, is born in St. Louis, Missouri. Her parents divorced when she was 3, and she and her brother went to live with their grandmother. And when she was 8, she was there revealing what happened when she went through a rape. And from this quiet beginning emerged this young woman who sang, danced, and recorded poetry. After moving to San Francisco with her mother and brother, she began taking dance lessons, eventually auditioning for professional theater. Her plans were put on hold when she had a son at the age of 16, moved to San Diego, worked as a nightclub waitress, tangled with drugs and prostitution, and danced in a strip club. Ironically, the strip club saved her career. She was discovered there by a theater group, auditioned for an international tour of Porgy and Bess, and won a role. And from 1954 to 55, she toured 22 countries. Moved to New York, became friends with prominent Harlem writers, and got involved with the civil rights movement. Moved to Egypt with a boyfriend and edited for the Arab Observer. And after leaving her boyfriend, she headed to Ghana, where a car accident severely injured her son. While caring for him in Ghana, she took a job at the African Review, where she stayed for several years, and her writing and personal development flourished under the African cultural renaissance that was taking place. When she returned to the US, she began publishing her multi-volume autobiography, starting with I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. 4 more volumes appeared during the next 2 decades, as well as several books of poetry. In 1981, she was appointed Professor of American Studies at Wake Forest University in Winston-Salem and nominated for several important awards, and read a poem written for the occasion at President Clinton's inauguration. Maya Angelou died in 2014. She was 86 years old, but she was born on today's date in the year 1928. Some of her readings are remarkable. The United States and 11 other nations established NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, a mutual defense pact aimed at containing possible Soviet aggression against Western Europe. NATO stood as the main US-led military alliance against the Soviet Union throughout the duration of the Cold War. NATO was established on today's date in 1949. Clocking in at 3 hours and 32 minutes. William Wyler's Technicolor epic, Ben-Hur, is the behemoth entry at the 32nd Annual Academy Awards ceremony held on this date in the year 1960 at the Archeo Pantages Theatre in Hollywood. Setting an Oscar record, the film sweeps 11 of the 12 categories in which it was nominated, including Best Picture, Best Director, and Best Actor, Charlton Heston. The 1959 film was the latest dramatic adaptation of the mega best-selling novel called Ben-Hur, A Tale of the Christ. The book was written by Lew Wallace, who wrote his most successful novel after experiencing a new awakening of his Christian faith. And the book told the story of a young Jewish aristocrat, Judah Ben-Hur, who chafes against the repressive Roman rule in Judea, loses his fortune and his family, but eventually triumphs over obstacle, thanks partially to the intervention of Jesus Christ. At the 1960 Oscars on today's date that year, Ben-Hur swept 11 categories. As we mentioned, Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actor, also Best Supporting Actor, Hugh Griffith, playing an Arab sheikh who befriends Ben-Hur. Best Color Cinematography, Best Color Art Direction, Set Direction, Best Sound, Best Score, Best Film Editing, Best Color Costume Design, and Best Special Effects. Nominated in the Best Adapted Screenplay category. Also, Ben-Hur's record number of Oscars still stands. And although 2 films, Titanic and The Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King, have matched it. You're listening to the theme of Ben-Hur. The Reverend Martin Luther King Jr., head of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, delivers a speech entitled Beyond Vietnam in front of 3,000 people at the Riverside Church in New York City. And in it, he says that there is a common link forming between the civil rights and peace movements. He proposed that the United States stop all bombing of North and South Vietnam, declared a unilateral truce in the hope that it would lead to peace talks, set a date for withdrawal of all troops from Vietnam, and give the National Liberation Front a role in negotiations. This speech happened on today's date in 1967. And exactly 1 year later, on the 4th of April in 1968, just after 6 p.m., Martin Luther King Jr. is fatally shot while standing on the balcony outside his second-story room at the Lorraine Hotel in Memphis, Tennessee. The civil rights leader was in Memphis to support a sanitation worker strike and was on his way to dinner when a bullet struck him in the jaw and severed his spinal cord. He was pronounced dead after his arrival at a Memphis hospital. He was 39 years old. In the months before his assassination, he became increasingly concerned with the problem of economic inequality in America, organized a Poor People's Campaign to focus on that issue, including a march on Washington, and traveled to Memphis in support of poorly treated African American sanitation workers. And that's where he was assassinated on today's date in 1968. The Twin Towers of the World Trade Center officially opened in New York City on the 4th of April in 1973. The World Trade Center, then the world's tallest building. The buildings replaced the Empire State Building as the world's tallest building, though they would only hold that title for a year. They remained a dominant feature of the city's skyline and were recognizable the world over long before they were destroyed in a terrorist attack in 2001. But they were opened, the World Trade Center, the twin buildings there, then the world's tallest building, opened in New York City on today's date in 1973. And on the 4th of April, opening day of the 1974 Major League Baseball season, 39-year-old Hank Aaron sends the first pitch he sees over the wall, tying the all-time home run record set by Babe Ruth. 4 days later, he would break that record. Aaron, who played in the majors from 54 to 76, was known for his longevity and consistency in addition to his power hitting. And on the 4th of April in 1975, at a time when most Americans used typewriters, childhood friends Bill Gates and Paul Allen found Microsoft, a company that makes computer software. Originally based in Albuquerque, New Mexico, Microsoft relocated to Washington State in 1979 and eventually grew into a major multinational technology corporation. In 1987, the year after Microsoft went public, 31-year-old Bill Gates became the world's youngest billionaire. Gates and Allen started Microsoft, originally called Micro-Soft, for microprocessors and software. In order to produce software for the Altair 8800, an early personal computer, Allen quit his job as a programmer in Boston, and Gates left Harvard University, where he was a student, to focus on their new company, which was based in Albuquerque because the city was home to electronics firm MITS, the maker of Altair 8800. By the end of 1978, Microsoft sales topped more than 1 million. And in 1979, the business moved its headquarters to Bellevue, Washington, a suburb of Seattle, where Gates and Allen had grown up. And the company went on to license its MS-DOS operation system to IBM for its first personal computer, which debuted in 1981. Afterwards, other computer companies started licensing MS-DOS, which had no graphical interface and required users to type in commands in order to open a program. In 1983, Allen departed Microsoft after being diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma. He was successfully treated for the disease and went on to pursue a variety of other business ventures. In 1985, Microsoft released a new operating system, Windows, with a graphical user interface that included drop-down menus, scroll bars, and other features. And the following year, the company moved its headquarters to Redmond, Washington, and went public at $21 a share, raising $61 million. And by the late 1980s, Microsoft, ladies and gentlemen, had become the world's biggest personal computer software company based on sales. In 1995, amidst skyrocketing purchases of personal computers for home and office use, Windows 95 made its debut, included such innovations as the Start menu, and 7 million copies of the new product were sold in the first 5 weeks. During the second half of the 1990s, internet usage took off, and Microsoft introduced its web browser, the Internet Explorer, in 1995. In 1998, the U.S. Department of Justice and 20 state attorneys general charged Microsoft with violating antitrust laws by using its dominance to drive competitors out of business. In 2001, the company reached a settlement with the government that imposed restrictions on its corporate practices. Also in 2001, Microsoft joined the video game market with the launch of its Xbox console. Microsoft, founded on today's date, the 4th of April in 19 75. And in the last story that I have from the Annals of History, on today's date, the 4th of April in 2013, one of America's best known and most influential movie critic, Roger Ebert, who reviewed movies for the Chicago Sun-Times for 46 years and on television for 31 years, dies at the age of 70 after battling cancer. In 1975, he started co-hosting a movie review program on television with fellow critic Gene Siskel that eventually turned them both into household names and made their thumbs up, thumbs down rating system part of American pop culture. He was diagnosed with thyroid cancer and salivary gland cancer and lost the ability to speak, drink, and eat in 2006 following surgery for jaw cancer. However, he continued to work and write for the Sun-Times, blogging for his own website and developing a large following on Facebook and Twitter, and publicly announced he would be writing fewer reviews due to a recurrence of his cancer just 2 days before, on the 2nd of April. And then he died on today's date, the 4th of April in 2013. The Sun-Times published his final movie review on the 6th of April for To the Wonder. Ebert awarded it 3.5 out of 4 stars. Those were some of the stories from the Annals of History that happened on today's date, and I hope you enjoyed listening to them. For those of you who would like to reach me directly for Community Radio Networks, my number is 214-675-1754, and that's our show for today. All the information with you, ready for you to take on the day.